What is alleged is unspeakable, and it hits you not as a prosecutor, but it hits you as a dad. I have a 7-year-old. A number of pieces of information that are still out there. We still have not been able to really dig into the cell phones in a way that we want to. There's a number of search warrants out on social media accounts, and so I think one of the things that I would caution everybody is when you look at this case, this is by no means the end of the investigation.
December 2024. A cold month, a cold discovery. 7-year-old Kayden Gavarrete was found lifeless inside his own home in Indianapolis. His story, it's a gut-wrenching tragedy. A story of unimaginable neglect, horrific abuse, and a child protection system that, for Kayden, appears to have utterly collapsed. Kayden, by all accounts, was a bright, energetic boy. He loved superheroes like so many kids his age. Video games were his passion. He had a spark, a light in him that should have shone for so many more years, but that light was extinguished far too soon. In May of that year, Kayden weighed a healthy 48 pounds. By the time he was found dead, his small body had withered to a mere 32 pounds. 16 pounds gone. Think about that. 16 pounds lost from a 7-year-old child. That's single, devastating detail. It screams volumes about the suffering he endured. How could this happen? How could a little boy full of life and promise be so terribly failed? Before the darkness closed in, Kayden knew love. He had a mother, Tammy, who cherished him. Those who knew him back then describe a happy child, full of energy and curiosity. He truly loved his superheroes, dreaming of having powers just like them. Video games provided another escape, a world where he could be the hero. He was close to his extended family, who were a constant presence in his young life. Tammy and Kevin, his parents, seemed to be building a life together, raising their son in Indianapolis. But then, in May of 2022, tragedy struck. Tammy passed away unexpectedly. Her loss left a gaping hole in Kayden's life, a wound that would never fully heal. This devastating event, Tammy's death, was a turning point. It set in motion a chain of events, a series of decisions and failures, that would ultimately seal Kayden's fate. It was the beginning of the end for this sweet, innocent boy. In the wake of Tammy's passing, a battle erupted over Kayden's custody. His maternal family, deeply worried about his well-being, stepped forward, seeking to provide him with a safe and loving home. They had concerns about Kevin's ability to care for Kayden on his own, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Very quickly, a new figure entered the picture: Julia Sizemore. She and Kevin began a relationship mere weeks after Tammy's death. This rapid involvement raised alarms within Kayden's maternal family. They saw it as a disturbing sign, a disregard for the grieving process and for Kayden's emotional needs. What many people didn't realize was that Child Protective Services had already been involved with this family. There had been multiple visits to the home even before Tammy's death. This wasn't a situation flying under the radar. The system was aware of this family. As Kevin and Julia's relationship deepened, Kayden's maternal relatives found themselves increasingly pushed away. Phone calls went unanswered. Visits were denied. They were systematically shut out of Kayden's life, their love and support denied to a child who desperately needed it. I know this was a heavy one, but these stories need to be told. If you're feeling it, give this video a thumbs up and share it to spread awareness. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our true crime community. For those of you who've been here a while, you know I appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around. Behind the closed doors of that house on South Pershing Avenue, a disturbing reality was unfolding. Neighbors would later tell investigators they rarely saw Kevin or Julia. And Kayden? He was practically invisible. Many neighbors had no idea a child even lived there. One relative, who briefly lived in the house during 2024, offered a chilling glimpse into Kayden's daily existence. This relative saw firsthand the fear and anxiety Kayden experienced in the presence of his father and Julia. He was clearly a child in distress, trapped in an environment where he felt unsafe and unloved. The house itself became a reflection of the neglect within. The lawn was overgrown, the paint peeling. It was a place falling apart, just like Kayden's young life. Adding another layer of sorrow to this already tragic story, Kayden's grandmother, Anne, who had also been living in the house, passed away shortly after Tammy. The circumstances surrounding her death raised questions among family members, but those questions remain unanswered. Another life lost, another shadow cast over this family. The final days of Kayden's short life were filled with anguish. On December 21, 2024, his condition deteriorated rapidly. He was visibly unwell, showing clear signs of needing urgent medical care. But that care was never sought. Instead, Kayden was left to suffer, alone in his room. On December 22nd, a desperate call was finally made to 911. When police arrived at the house, they found a scene of utter despair. Kayden's room was practically bare. Minimal furniture, a dog cage, it was a stark and desolate environment for any child, let alone one so desperately in need of comfort and care. Kayden was gone. The medical examiner's report would later confirm the horrific truth. This little boy, who loved superheroes and video games, had been subjected to unimaginable cruelty. The details of his injuries, the evidence of prolonged neglect and abuse, they are truly heartbreaking. Too painful to recount here, but they must never be forgotten. In the aftermath of Kayden's death, investigators began piecing together the truth. Kevin, Kayden's father, offered a series of inconsistent and frankly unbelievable explanations. He claimed Kayden had been sick, but downplayed the severity of his illness. He even suggested that Kayden's injuries were self-inflicted. His attempts to deflect responsibility were a slap in the face to the memory of his son. Julia's story was equally troubling. She admitted to being aware of Kayden's declining health, yet she never sought medical help. Her excuse? She didn't want to interfere with Kevin's parental decisions. A shocking abdication of responsibility for a woman who was entrusted with the care of a vulnerable child. But the disturbing details didn't end there. A deeper dive into Kevin and Julia's past revealed a pattern of concerning behavior. There was the incident at Walmart where police had to be called, Julia's DUI arrest with Kayden in the car, and a domestic dispute at the home with Kevin listed as the victim. These incidents painted a clear picture of a volatile and unstable environment, one where Kayden was never truly safe. Perhaps the most gut-wrenching detail in this tragic story was the discovery of Christmas presents under the family tree. Presents for Kevin and Julia's 2 daughters. But for Kayden, nothing. Not a single gift. A devastating symbol of his isolation, a stark reminder that he was not just neglected but forgotten. Kevin and Julia now face the consequences of their actions. They have been charged with neglect resulting in death, criminal confinement, and multiple counts of neglect of a dependent. Justice will run its course, but no legal outcome can ever bring Kayden back. Kayden's family, determined to find some meaning in this senseless loss, is fighting for change. They are advocating for the passage of Kayden's law in Indiana. This legislation would prioritize child safety in custody disputes and require specialized training for judges and court staff in domestic violence issues. It's a fight for accountability, a fight to ensure that no other child suffers Kayden's fate. This memorial, outside the house where Kayden should have been safe, stands as a testament to a life cut short. A life filled with potential stolen by neglect and abuse. This tragedy must lead to meaningful change. We must do better. For Kayden, and for all children who deserve to be protected and loved. We began this story with a question: how could this happen? How could a 7-year-old boy, full of life and potential, be so brutally failed? The answer, tragically, is complex. It lies in a system that is often overwhelmed, underfunded, and reactive rather than proactive. It lies in the cracks that vulnerable children can fall through, unseen and unheard. Kayden's death exposes the gaps in our child protection system. It highlights the need for better communication between agencies, for more thorough investigations, and for greater support for families in crisis. But it also reminds us that we all have a role to play in protecting children. We cannot remain silent. If you see something that concerns you, if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected, please speak up. Say something. Make the call. Your voice could be the one that saves a child's life. Kayden's story must not be forgotten. Let his memory be a catalyst for change. Let's work together to create a world where every child is safe, loved, and cherished. A world where no other child suffers the same fate.